It cost me 3.5 years to rent a small apartment in a bad area in order to save money. The first thing I did when I moved in was make it safer. The old front door lock was replaced with a new one, and a broken locking doorknob was put in its place. The windows were all old and weak. They were the cheap metal kind that slide open and shut and had bad locks. The back door was a patio door that opened up to a deck. In order to make things safer, I bought some strong wood and cut it to fit the window and patio door tracks. Someone would have to break a window instead of just opening it if they tried to break in. The strange visits and strange questions they asked about Sam, the previous tenant, make me think that someone who lived here before may have been doing something illegal. People who looked very confused and asked for someone called Sam came to my door 4 times in the first 6 months. When I got home after those events, I made sure that all the doors were always locked. I did forget to lock the front door sometimes, though. Then, one night, when I forgot to lock it, something very scary took place. It was dark when I went to the bathroom while making dinner. I washed my hands and went back to the kitchen. There was a middle-aged man in all black walking up the steps from the entrance to my kitchen. I was shocked and asked, "Who are you?" He told me he was there to fix a toilet. I was scared and thought I might be in danger, but I waited to do something dangerous like get a kitchen knife to protect myself before I talked to him for a while. The man said that the owner, Gary, had asked him to fix a toilet. I told him that Gary wasn't my owner and that everything was okay with my toilet. I gave him my address because he asked for it. He said he was sorry many times and that he had gone to the wrong place. He slowly went back down the stairs, put on his boots, and left, looking very ashamed. I'm still not sure if he really left because Sam wasn't there or because he was looking for Sam to pay some old debts. He might have thought I was someone else he was going to hurt but changed his mind when he saw me. Someone sent him to fix Gary's toilet and walked into my house by chance, or he was just lost. This began at the end of August 2019, right after I moved into my new place. I live in Florida in a small town. Small things going missing or getting mixed up, strange feelings and strange noises were the first signs. Even when I was sure I was by myself, I never felt lonely. My daughter and I share a room. One of our roommates has moved in with his lover because of the strange things that are still happening here. On the first night, there wasn't much set up or cleaned up. The bag I put my journal, charger, makeup, and other important things in was out of the way. I quickly became sidetracked and set up a lot of stuff. My phone battery was dying quickly because I usually listen to music while I work. Of course, I checked my bag for my charger but couldn't find it. I looked everywhere in my bedroom, then in the kitchen and living room, which were the only places I had been in, but I couldn't find anything. Some of my neighbors have cats and one had a chihuahua that was very loud. I heard something fall in the empty room down the hall from the living room around 10 o'clock. A lot of barking from the dog made me think it was the dog, not the cats. I had to check on him because I didn't want him to bark any longer, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay. I saw it right away when I walked into the room. I could see that a few boxes had been thrown around. Inside them were mostly books and action figures. Mine was there when I looked more closely. It was in a room I hadn't been in at all, in the middle of the mess. How did it get there? It was in my bag when I got here, and I saw my roommate bring those boxes in. He even pulled out his favorite comic book during his lunch break, but my charger wasn't nearby at that time. I'm sure of it. Then, the next night, I lost my keys and still haven't found them. I haven't been in that room in over 1.5 years, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again. The next strange thing was that my cat started acting differently. Like Philip J. Fry, my cat, would go crazy if I left him in my room by himself. He would puff up, cry out loud, and hide in the worst places. After a while, I finally got him to stop, but I don't remember how. Jingles is my other cat. She is a quiet black cat that sleeps most of the time and doesn't follow anyone around. She's about 10 years old, so it was strange to find her following me around the house. After a few months, at the end of October, my daughter was home and asleep. As of 8 p.m., she has always slept through the night since we moved in. While I was trying to draw something in the living room, I quietly watched TV and looked through some books. The two people who live with me work different shifts, so both of them were at work that night. I was quite interested in my drawing when I heard a noise. I turned off the TV to listen more carefully because at first I couldn't figure out what it was. Once I knew what it was, a heavy, strong feeling started to take over me. But something about it didn't seem or feel right. It sounded like a child laughing and talking. I went to my daughter's room after leaving the living room. She was still asleep, as I thought. She wasn't moving. There was a creepy silence in the room, like in a horror movie. There was nothing obviously wrong, but the house had a threatening vibe to it. I get the feeling that I'm not alone sometimes, even when I know I'm not. I forgot to say at the beginning of the story that the repairman said something that I thought was strange when we first moved into this house. Since he's worked for that owner for 10 years, he said, every person who moved into that house had left before their lease was up. Some quit as early as 6 months in. He said he had seen a lot of couples break up. People get really sick, people lose their minds, and even cars break down. At first, I thought it might be bad luck, or maybe it's something about this house. I hung out with a girl who wasn't always stable. I'm going to call her Jane instead of her real name just to be safe. If she knew what I was about to say, she might get very angry. Jane's family was a mess, and her dad caused a lot of her troubles. She told me that when her dad died, she went to the funeral to find out where he was buried. After a few days, Jane called me in the middle of the night and asked me to take her to the graveyard to break his gravestone. No matter how much I didn't like someone, I would never do something like that to them. But I could see why Jane might want to do it to her dad. Since she didn't have a license, I picked her up and drove to the graveyard with her. She took a hammer and some shopping bags out of her purse when I parked the car outside. She said she was going to break up the gravestone, put it in a bag, and leave. After that, we quickly left and went to the grave. It didn't take long because Jane knew exactly where it was, but I was scared the whole time. We didn't belong in the graveyard. It made us feel like we were disturbing the dead by walking through in the middle of the night. I tried to cool down and give Jane some space. She knelt on the fresh grave at first, cursing and crying out of pure emotion. At that moment, she screamed and hit the headstone for the first time. I was shocked and scared by her screams. It was clear she wouldn't hear me when I turned around to tell her to be quiet. She was yelling and hitting the stone hard because she had lost control. Small pieces broke off with each hit. If she kept going at that speed, I knew we'd be there for a while. I was afraid that someone in the neighborhood would hear us because she was making so much noise. I also imagined how scary it would be for someone to walk by the graveyard and hear Jane screaming. Because of what my gut told me, I became more concerned about my own safety. Jane was completely crazy and thrashing around because she was so angry and upset over her loss. I was with her by myself in the dark, with dead people all around us. I was afraid that if I got too close, she would forget who I was, think I was the ghost of her father, and attack me. In spite of this, her deep anger didn't last long, and she looked at her progress. She was already tired, but 2/3 of the headstone was still there. Then she looked at me, and I saw that her eyes were completely crazy. I had always thought she was a little off, but this was a whole new level. She moved in jerky, sudden ways. She hit me in the chest with the hammer and told me to finish the job. I said no because I didn't want to get involved in something that I thought was Jane's business. But as soon as I did, she grabbed my ears and pulled my face close to hers. It was almost too loud for me to hear her scream. She told me that if I didn't break the gravestone for her, she would hit me with the hammer and bury my body next to her dad's. I knew I couldn't go back, so I reluctantly agreed and made up my mind to finish quickly. I was more careful than Jane, but I was stronger. I knew I had to break the gravestone because I had no other choice. I was able to break off the bigger pieces while Jane laughed hysterically behind me. She cheered for me like a witch at a seance. I tried not to pay attention to her, but couldn't. I got chills when I looked over my shoulder and saw that she had taken out a knife. Before I knew it, she got down on her knees behind me, put her arms around my shoulders, and said some creepy things to me. I stopped swinging the hammer because I thought I might hit her by chance. After telling me I was almost done, she did something I will never forget. She had both hands out in front of me, and one of them had the knife in it. I was afraid that she would try to attack me if I stayed there any longer. I pushed her as hard as I could because I needed to stay alive. Then I ran outside to my car. I ran away as fast as I could after that. When I got home, I blocked Jane on all of her accounts and got rid of her phone number. I had no desire to interact with her further, and I have not talked to her since. I hope she gets the help she needs, but I don't know where she is now. I'm still scared when I think about that night. Jane's extreme anger and sadness seemed to change her into someone I hardly knew. Everything about her, from the way she spoke to the way she moved, felt dangerously fragile. I will always remember how cold I felt when I saw that knife. It made me understand how badly she was hurt, and that I couldn't help her any further because it would put my safety at risk. Be careful the next time someone you know tells you to go out at night. It all began a few months ago when my new neighbors moved in next door. Things quickly became terrible. They were unbelievably loud, and every day that I worked from home, the noise broke my concentration. It was hard to sleep because their little kids were screaming all night. I don't blame them that their dogs barked non-stop all day in the garden, but those poor dogs were locked up for most of the day. Anyway, my new neighbors were annoying and didn't seem to care about other people, but I don't like getting into arguments, so I had to get used to the noise. For a few months, this went on. After some time, I heard a fight outside a few weeks ago. It sounded important, so I paid attention right away. As background, my neighbors were a young couple with 2 little kids. Aside from saying hello or good afternoon, I didn't talk to them much. The person next door had a white van that he must have used for work. He was fighting with an older man in front of his car when I heard the fight. Then, after a few days, I saw that the white van that was always parked in front of their house was gone. It also stopped being possible for me to hear the dogs barking or the kids crying late at night. I was really happy about this. I let out a happy sigh of relief and thanked God for the peace and quiet. I thought they might have taken a short vacation or something. But as the days turned into weeks, the noise didn't come back. The house next door didn't say a word. There was no movement or sound coming from that direction at all. The front windows stayed open for days, though, even though the house was quiet. I started to think that the fight outside might have been with the owner, and that's why they left so quickly. All the time I worked from home, so I kept an eye out. But I never saw their van or any other moving van come back. But as time went on, I began to hear strange sounds coming from their house. My house is linked to theirs because it's a semi-detached house. The walls between our houses aren't very thick because the building is older. As I tried to fall asleep one night, I heard a strange scratching sound coming from inside my closet. It's one of those built-in kinds, and it's against the wall that sides my house from my neighbor's. That means the back of the closet is just the room's wall. I laid there and listened to the noise. It made me nervous because I thought there might be a mouse or something. Being scared, I got out of bed, turned on the lamp next to it, stood up, and hurried to the closet. I don't like it when bugs hide in my house, so I took out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it inside the closet. There was nothing there, even though I looked in every corner. I felt calm and at ease, but then I heard it happen again. I jumped back from the closet door in fear and almost dropped my phone. As I quickly pointed the light back into the open space of the closet, my heart was racing. The sound kept going back and forth in my ears, getting louder as time went on. Something was trying very hard to get through the wall because it was coming from behind it. I had to hold back my yelling by putting my hand over my mouth. What the heck was that noise? It wasn't a mouse because it was too loud. As I thought about what was going on next door, I began to feel scared. The noise stopped all of a sudden. I stood there with my breath held for 2 minutes, hoping to hear it again. But there was silence. I slept downstairs that night because I was afraid to hear that scary scratching sound again. Over the next few days, I kept hearing strange sounds coming from next door. The noises moved around their house a lot, so it was hard to tell where they were coming from. Lucky for me, I never heard that scratching sound again. But it was still really creepy to hear weird thumps or things moving next door. The neighbors' kids and dogs were still quiet, so I started to think they might be coming back every so often to take their stuff. But I hadn't seen them yet. From the window in my back bedroom, I could see their yard. It was strange that the dog kennels they used were still in the yard. While I was at work one day, I heard a strange sound coming from the back of their house. It made me stop what I was doing and listen. I could hear the dogs moving around in their cages if I left the windows of my house open. The cages would creak when the dogs moved. I sat there and paid close attention. In the crates, I could hear what sounded like dogs moving around. I quickly went upstairs and peered out the window in my bedroom. The cages were not full yet. There was a chill down my back. Something else strange added to the long list of strange sounds I had been hearing for weeks. Another scary one happened a few days ago, and this time, I saw something. As I carried my bags into the house, I had just come back from the store. It looked like the front door of my neighbor was a little open. After looking at it for a while, I thought maybe a neighbor would come out. But the house stayed quiet, and no one did. I locked my front door again after bringing my groceries inside and putting the last bag in the kitchen. I thought it was just another strange event. But then I became interested. I left my house again, walked down my driveway, and then slowly made my way up the path to my neighbor's front door. Someone opened their door more in the time it took me to bring my bags inside. I could almost see inside now, and what I saw was very scary. I could see their front hallway because the door was only half open. To the left of the door, there were shoes and toys for kids all over the ground. An open light was in the room I thought was the kitchen at the end of the hall. When I called out, I pushed the front door open even more quickly. I jumped back in fear when a cold wind blew past me. The kitchen door opened at that very moment, and I thought I saw a dark person standing there. I ran as fast as I could to get away, but I didn't start to feel better until I was back home and behind my locked door. As I sat on the floor and tried to catch my breath, a lot of different things went through my mind at once. You should know that even though I love scary stories, I get very scared when strange things happen in my own home. It was getting better when I heard 3 clear knocks on the front door. I stopped moving at all. After 1 minute, there were no more knocks. As expected, when I opened the door and looked outside, there was nothing there. No one on my street, or I still don't know what happened to my friends. They were never seen again. Since then, I haven't seen the dark figure, but I still hear strange sounds from time to time. Whatever is in that house needs to stay there.